What's up, guys? Nathan here. After playing a handful of characters this league, I finally happened upon one build that I think deserves a full blown video guide. This Tri-Curse Ultra Tanky Stormbrand Occultist. Essentially, my goal with this build was to revisit brands since I league started with an Armageddon brand Hierophant. However, this time, instead of focusing on single target and minimal currency investment, I chose to go for survivability and better clear speed. The playstyle for this build is pretty standard for a brand character. You run around, dropping your brands on packs, pressing brand recall when you want to concentrate your clear, and looting while you wait for tankier enemies to die. Additionally, to supplement your single target damage, we use a 4-link lightning spire trap, which is usually more than enough to kill bosses quickly. The uniqueness of this build comes from its absurd levels of tankiness provided by the Occultist Ascendancy, the Chaos Inoculation Keystone, Energy Shield Leech and Gain on Hit, 3 defensive curses, and Aspect of the Spider. These defensive layers mean that you are basically unkillable by regular enemies, and bosses can just be kited endlessly while Stormbrand DPSs and leeches for you. So, before we get started on the guide, let's take a quick look at the general pros and cons of this build. Pros. Super tanky, especially while mapping. Flexible in gearing and what gems you choose to use. Cheap to start, but can scale with heavy investment as well. Fun and fast clear with Profane Bloom explosions and instant cast brand recall. Immune to chaos damage, making Syndicate bullshit slightly less bullshit. Can do almost all map mods outside of Elemental Reflect. And SSF and hardcore viable with only a few minor changes. Cons. Below average single target damage. Doesn't move very fast outside of Flame Dash. Extremely expensive to min-max. And relatively low life while you're leveling up through the story acts. Next up, let's take a look at the passive tree, as well as some tips for leveling. Basically, the tree looks like this. It's a little weird because of how we take 2 different paths from the witch's starting area, but trust me, these are the most efficient nodes available to give us the energy shield and cast speed we need. Anyway, you start on the left side, go up to Lightning Walker, then rush Elemental Overload. You can use any skill you want, but remember to buy Stormbrand from Nessa in Act 1 after you kill Merveil. You'll be pretty squishy for a while, but leveling like this will allow you to pretty much one-shot all enemies without trouble. Continue to stick to the left side of the tree, picking up the Explosive Runes Notable and Runebinder Keystone as quickly as possible. The latter straight up doubles your single target DPS, so look forward to that. Also, be sure you kill all bandits for those juicy extra skill points. One more note, you might want to start using Clarity around this point, as you are going to struggle with mana problems until you can start using your Warlord's Mark Ring. After you finish up the left side of the tree, it's time to start working on your survivability. Go back to the start, take all of these fantastic energy shield nodes, then make your way to the right, grabbing the hybrid life wheels, crackling speed, and the entire runesmith wheel. When you eventually decide to do lab, you can take whatever you want, but I personally went Wicked Ward into Vile Bastion for maximum survivability. The last leg of your leveling journey should look something like this. Fill in Sovereignty, Faith in Steel, and Path of the Savant, and socket in your Energy from Within Jewel as soon as you can afford it. Grab Ghost Reaver once you're ready to start relying on Leech, and you should be just about ready to start mapping. Again, this is the completed tree at level 91. By now, you should have an idea of where you want to go to finish it up, but I would try to prioritize getting Chaos Inoculation, Whispers of Doom, and Hexmaster. We'll take a look at higher level options after I talk about gearing, but for now, this should get you started. Now, let's go over the gem setups. It's important to remember that these are very flexible and you should feel free to change them around to best fit your personal playstyle. That being said, your first and most important one is this 6-link. Stormbrand, Faster Casting, Concentrated Effect, Elemental Focus, Controlled Destruction, and Lightning Penetration, in that exact order in terms of importance. Your next setup is in your helm, which needs to be a Heretic's Veil in this case. The links are Temporal Chains, Enfeeble, Vol Discipline, and Enlighten. The Enlighten is only necessary if you want to run Aspect of the Spider, but if you do, it unfortunately needs to be level 4. The next setup is your big single target damage support, Lightning Spire Trap. Your links should be Lightning Spire Trap, Concentrated Effect, Controlled Destruction, and Trap and Mine Damage. Note that because we aren't using advanced trap support, the cooldown will be relatively long, so only use this spell if you know the enemy won't be moving for at least a few seconds. The next two setups are 3 links in your weapon and shield, one for mobility and one for even more single target burst. The first of the two is Flame Dash, faster casting, and a level 1 Arcane Surge, while the second is Vol Righteous Fire, efficacy, and increased duration. Your last setup is actually very flexible depending on what you need. You could do a cast when damage taken setup with Immortal Call or Vortex, Phase Run with increased duration for more mobility, or even Tempest Shield. However, the one thing you'll definitely want is Brand Recall as high level as possible. The links I personally use are Brand Recall, Summon Lightning Golem, Portal, and Empower. Obviously, the higher level you can get your Empower, the better, but don't lose sleep over not having one at level 4, or even at all. Now for the exciting part of the video, gearing. The way I'll be going about this section is I'll present the required gear, the recommended gear, and lastly the best gear to shoot for as endgame upgrades. Note that even the required gear can be subject to change depending on how you want to build your character, but those are decisions you'll have to make on your own. Required. Heretic's Veil to save you some mana reservation and grant you a free level 22 Blasphemy. Astramentus will completely solve this character's horrible dexterity and strength problems. A rare Elder Ring with the Curse Enemies with Warlord's Mark on hit mod. Magic Flasks with Bleed, Ignite, Freeze, and Curse Removal. They can be whatever base type you like, but I personally use a Quicksilver, Basalt, Quartz, and Silver. Rares with Energy Shield and enough resistances to reach 75% for all elements. A rare main hand weapon, such as a wand or scepter, that grants lots of cast speed. Recommended. Mark of the Shaper will give you a ton of much needed damage as long as you are using an Elder Ring in the other slot. Energy from Within will grant you a nice chunk of Energy Shield. The Wise Oak is the best DPS flask for this build. Just make sure your uncapped lightning resistance is the highest of your 3 elemental resistances, and if you want to use it for its defensive properties, just balance them all instead. Aspect of the Spider crafted onto your gear somewhere. I personally recommend using your Warlord's Mark Ring. A better main hand weapon that grants cast speed, added lightning damage to spells, elemental penetration, spell damage, extra chaos damage, and or increased lightning damage. Endgame Chase. A Watcher's Eye with as many discipline mods as possible, especially energy shield gain on hit and increased energy shield recovery rate. Rares with more and more energy shield. This may sound boring, but part of the beauty of builds like this is that energy shield gear will keep scaling the more currency you throw at it. With amazing gear, you should be able to push this build over the 12,000 energy shield mark. An insane amulet with energy shield stats, elemental penetration, increased lightning damage, and cast speed. Something like this will require picking up some big dexterity and strength nodes on the tree, so only consider this option if you are approaching level 100 and running out of upgrades to make. For this last section of the build, I wanted to take a minute to talk about bossing. In theory, this build barely goes over 450k Shaper DPS, even with pretty great gear. You could supplement your single target damage with skills like Lightning Spire Trap, Vol Righteous Fire, and even Vol Stormcall, but at the end of the day, this build will never reach face melting levels of boss damage. For example, let's take this clip of me doing Phoenix. He has some extra attack and cast speed from map mods, but otherwise, this is a pretty standard endgame encounter. Granted, my gear is pretty bad at this point, most of my gems aren't maxed out, and I'm not even using Aspect of the Spider. But when it's all said and done, the kill takes exactly 1 minute and 31 seconds. The point is, the benefit of this build for bossing is not the damage, or even really the survivability thanks to reduced curse effectiveness. In fact, I wouldn't even say this build is an efficient boss killer at all. However, it does let you do one thing: learn safely. You can see here, all I'm doing is running and flame dashing around while my brands do their thing. I don't have to stop to DPS or start leeching. I just quickly cast a brand every 10 seconds or so, then go back to dodging mechanics. It's like playing a totem or minion build, except you're even tankier. I hope you guys enjoyed my build guide today. This was probably one of my stronger builds I've ever made, and I can't help but be a little proud of it. Thanks for watching, this has been Nathan, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you!
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my video, and more importantly, I want to thank my awesome Patreon supporters, more specifically, Real Human, Pete, Zikarak, Squally, Zoljan, brand new supporter, Coda, Julia, and Alan. Thank you guys so much, you make what I do possible. And I also want to plug the Discord because we have a fun little Discord where we're hanging out, the Patreon supporters and then also the non-Patreon supporters. We're learning about the game and making friends and all those good things. So yeah, you can go to that URL if you want to hang out with us. Thanks again, guys. Consider checking me out on Patreon and have a good one.